Hello and welcome to the Temple Mount Podcast. My name is Shogun. Joining me today is my good friend Super Mortuo. This is going to be episode 3 of the Spiral Code series, and we'll get into what the Spiral Code is in just a moment. But before we do, please make sure you've joined us on the Temple Mount Discord server, where we record this podcast pretty much every day. Check out the announcements channel for upcoming events and the Temple Mount Podcast channel for all of our hundreds of great episodes. Please make sure you subscribe to that channel for daily updates. That being said, welcome Super Mortuo. Good to see you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Shogun?
I am very well, thank you. So do you want to try and do an introduction to what you think the spiral code means, or would you like me to kind of give a TLDR intro, or how do you think that works best?
I think you're best prepared to do the intro.
Okay. Well, you can find Spiral Code Episode 2 in the Unified Theory channel of the Temple Mount Podcast server. I highly recommend that episode. Basically, the idea of the spiral code is it overlaps with what people call mental illness. So when people have mental illness, they'll say like, people will say that they have mental illness. They'll say like, the television is talking to me, or people are talking about me in public who don't know me, or the radio or the music is talking to me, or I see signs and they have meaning to me. And so people go, oh, well, you're crazy. You're seeing patterns where they're not actually there. However, for those of us who experience it, sometimes that explanation just doesn't cut it. Then we can tell that there is actually some kind of weird synchronization, some kind of weird correspondence between what we're seeing externally and what we're experiencing internally. So, although other people won't believe you and they'll just label you as mentally ill, it seems that there is actually some kind of an intelligent process going on where what you're internally experiencing, your thoughts, your feelings, are actually mirrored by things happening around you, which can be people saying things that seem to be directed at you. Like they walk by and they say some weird thing. It's like, why would they say that? But it makes perfect sense to you based on what you're thinking. Or you're thinking something, you come around the corner and there's a poster or a painting on the wall that's exactly about what you were thinking about. Or the music, the song that comes on is precisely about what you were thinking about, or something along those lines. And that kind of is what I call the spiral code. It's like when external events start syncing up with internal events. And obviously, this can be a delusion, right? You can have a delusion that this is happening, but we postulate that this actually can happen. And our friend Hugh came up with a really good concept called cynosis, which I like. It goes really well with the spiral code concept. So psychosis is sort of like when you're getting confused and you're seeing patterns when they're not there. Cynosis is sort of like you really do know what's going on. You can see what's happening before it's happening. You can understand the signs and symbols around you. It really does relate to you. It really does make sense to you. And that's basically kind of how I would describe the spiral code. I'll give you an example from my own life. It's kind of sinister. Sometimes it's sinister, sometimes it's benevolent. So I'll sometimes get thoughts in my head, like what NSA calls psychic driving, where it'll be something like kill yourself, you need to kill yourself, you should kill yourself, you need to die, you should kill yourself. And I'll hear these thoughts like coming into my head externally. Anyways, I was walking in downtown Kelowna, and this homeless guy walks by, and he looks at me in the eyes. He's got like weird glazed eyes, and he goes, "Kill yourself, kill yourself. You need to kill yourself." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Kill yourself. You need to kill yourself." And the bizarre thing is, he was saying it exactly the same way, with exactly the same cadence and exactly the same, phrasing as the voices that come into my head. So that's when I'm like, okay, well, that can't just be mental illness, because what are the coincidences that I'm getting this beamed into my head? Then this guy is saying exactly the same thing to me, not to anybody else, right? And so that's one example of the spiral code. Or I'll just give one more example. It's like you're having a profound religious experience, and then all of a sudden a song comes on the radio, and the guy is singing exactly about what you're thinking about at exactly that time. Stuff like that, and it could take any different number of forms. So, like, would you agree with that kind of definition by any chance?
I suppose I would just like to add that sometimes singularities can happen within the spiral code. So like for example, like in my story, like the number 667 came up a couple times, just a couple times, right? and whenever it came up, there was always like a significant like event that kind of like happened. Um, Anything else I would probably add is that you know, there's always like a big kind of like change in the external environment too. I find with the spiral code. So for you, I guess it would be like your missions that kind of like process you to go somewhere, right? And for me,
Yeah.
it's like for me, it's like trying to find my place where I have to go next. So I could kind of relate to that.
So you get a feeling like you have to go somewhere. You have to go from place to place. Like you feel compelled to do it. Sort of.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes like I'll go through like a I guess a part of the program where they'll leave me messages and then I wouldn't know what to do with it until like later on, like maybe like it could be like half a year goes by and then I'll be like, oh, I remember this. There's like either people, places, or things that add up. For me, it's been graffiti, things, and then finding the people that like make the graffiti, right? Just because I'm like on the mission. I'm in the program right now.
Yeah, I see graffiti a lot of the time as significant, and I actually one thing that really trips me out is when I was a kid, I briefly got involved in graffiti, and I had a particular tag, right? I used to tag either toke or moke, like moke, MOKE, but there was a particular way that I did it with bubble letters, and then the O had like an eye, and then the E was like a face, and it was a very specific tag that I did when I was like 14, and I only did graffiti for a short period of time. But the bizarre thing is, somebody to this day in Winnipeg is still using my tag exactly the same way that I did it. Like it's identical to the way I did it. Someone's still tagging Moke, but I made that tag up like over a decade or two ago. So then I'm like, what the hell? Did someone steal my tag and they're still doing it to this day? Or is it like this is like a time traveling me in the future who's doing this? Like I can't make any sense of why they're using the exact same tag that I did, because it wasn't even a very good tag or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's like it's very strange. Or like, yeah, there'll be like messages or things like that in the graffiti that seem meaningful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I could give you one example of what happened to me is so I hear voices, right, and you hear voices too, but sometimes my voices will like give me missions to like go out and then I go to the park or something and just look at the sky. I've seen UFOs. I've seen and then what's bringing me to my next point is like I've seen graffiti. And at the time, I had a friend that was struggling with drug addiction, and they weren't in a very safe place at the time, and I was worried about them. And then I see the graffiti. I go tells me to go to the park in the middle of the night. I'm trying to find like the signs that lead me to like where's the right place to be. And then my the voices were like, "Take me out to the ball game." So I'm like, "All right, so it's got to be around the baseball court somewhere." So I spent like a good 20 minutes looking around, and I find like this green bin box, and it says my friend's. It says in like really cryptic letters, "Stop Steph." And that was my friend's name was Stephanie. So I'm like, I took that as a sign, as like, this is what I need to see. This is like a warning that something bad is going to happen. And she relapsed very hard within the next couple of weeks. She wasn't doing very well. So I sent her that message as like a sign to say like try to get your shit together. I'm here for you. Just be safe. She wasn't being too careful. So you know that was just like one instance. There's been so many, probably for both me and you.
So, do you find that like you're able to actually get meaningful messages from these external things like graffiti, and they do actually tie into your life in a way that actually plays out like in a productive or positive way? Like you're actually able to get like useful information out of it sometimes?
Absolutely, yeah. And it could be something as like simple as like so. There's this one venue I like to go to in my city. It's like a very punk dive bar venue, so there's graffiti everywhere, right? And this was like it was like in the towards like the beginning of this year. Everything's starting to open up again. It was still COVID, and I haven't been to a show since like COVID started, and they just like this is basically like the first kind of I think the end of the second wave. or the third wave, I think, in my city. And I go to the venue and I see like the graffiti with my name. It's like my name is in graffiti on a speaker, and it's got like a halo and it's got like a little demon tail. And I'm like, it could be anyone, but I felt it spoke to me personally, just
Hmm.
because I go to the venue a lot. I was a regular at the place. I've had contact with people that are kind of like in the psychic vampire realm of things, where there's kind of like this hive mind of like collective consciousness. Um, I don't know if I can get into that because it's like a big, broad thing, right? But there's like basically like a collective in my city where a lot of psychic and like energetic things are going on. Um, so I found the graffiti and I felt like it spoke to me personally, and I'm pretty sure someone left that there for me to look at and be like, because I had basically a psychic encounter with one of the bartenders at the venue. So I'm thinking like maybe they left this for me, and then the reason I had the encounter with the bartender in the first place is because I was looking at graffiti in a park not too far away from the venue, and it led me to have the encounter with the bartender.
So you sometimes wear like the double horns when you're using like a filter or whatever you like to, and you used to go by the name Satan, and you like to put like a double. So you saw something like that, and it spoke to you like that it represented you. Is that the case? And then
I
you followed it, and it led you to something important.
Not exactly that. So I just went to the venue after like not being there because of COVID, and then there's my name, my first name on in graffiti with the halo and the devil tail. I felt like it resembled me in a way because like I feel like I might be part of like a Nephilim bloodline or something like that. So obviously what that entails, right?
Hmm. Yeah, the Nephilim were sort of like the aliens or the fallen angels or whatever you want to call them interbred with humans, and their children were called the Nephilim. And some
So I
people think,
I think I'm like Nephilim with like Elohim. You know what I mean?
hmm,
So I'm like a
yeah,
mixed hybrid.
right. I've heard people make the argument that bipolar people are Nephilim, like that bipolar people are more likely to be Nephilim. I have no idea if there's any like truth to that or not, but I think it was Zoo who told me that. What are some of the reasons why you feel like you might be Nephilim?
Uh, well, I'm not entirely too sure. Probably because like the encounters I've had with like extra like seeing UFOs in the sky, and then things have led me to like look in the sky, and then I notice UFOs, and no one else really notices around me, and then I just somehow pick it up. Um, I think the biggest indicator that led me to believe I was Nephilim was going into psychosis for the first time, and then being kind of like getting like sort of like hints that there was like a plan. The devil had this plan. Satan had this plan against me because he wanted to test me. Either because I was like uh I was part of like his agency, or I was kind of like just in his realm of contacts or something like that. Because there's like a relation, there's like a core relation with the blood ties.
So you felt like you were part of Satan's organization, or that you might have been like connected to Satan through blood ties.
Yeah.
And what were some of the things that gave you that impression, or made you think that? I'm just curious, like what kind
Well,
of thing
I
indicated to
I'm
you?
I'm almost positive I come from a Templar lineage. There's a castle in Portugal. It's like basically just a ruins of like a tower, but it has my last name, and the Templars occupied that tower for like for a long time, and the Portuguese were remained in Portugal for they could still be there. You know what I mean? Because they might have gone underground. They might have just completely eradicated. But regardless, the history remains in Portugal when they converted to the Knights of Christ. So I'm
Right.
thinking I probably have like some connections within that realm of like their mysticism and their knowledge and esoterics, whether it be The Rosicrucians or the Templars themselves, but I feel like I fall somewhere in between that. And those people obviously have some higher powered knowledge that is tapped into what is, proceeding into like great grand architect or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right. Um, so when it comes to your spiral code things, do you hear voices? Like, do you hear voices in your head talking to you or giving you messages?
So I hear voices that tell me to go to places and look at things like graffiti or artwork or something like that, and make some type of like um, some sense out of it, like whether it be like a personal emotional response or something. But I've encountered people that have made the graffiti that has led me to see some other things. So this one time I ran away from home, and I was just out in the streets. I was thought about going to a shelter, and I was out all night, and basically there was this man that like asked me for a lighter, and he basically looked homeless. I don't think he was. I'm not sure if he was or wasn't, but he looked very dirty, and just he seemed very wise. And so I'm like, I gave him my lighter. He fucking broke it. It was the only lighter I had. It was like a cheap dollar store lighter, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I broke your lighter. I'll pay you for a new one, right?" And so he gave me some money to buy a new lighter, and like, why is this guy giving me money? Why is this guy? And I asked him like, why would you do this for me? And he's like, I just want to do nice things for those like that are part of the program or the family, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that as a sign, as like, all right, I'm like in this for sure. And he showed me some of his artwork. He showed me his tag, and I've seen his tags around the city at a couple points. And so I took note of like see his a lot of his artwork in the book he showed me. I took note of his tag, and I still see his tag to this day around. So I think he's one of those. I guess you would say an agent, right?
Right.
Where he
Yeah.
had.
I wouldn't call him an agent.
Yeah, few.
Agents are agents. Agents work for an intelligence agency. He's just probably a victim to their system that is more self-aware than others are. Because there's some people that have no idea what's going on and just like they're just, you know what I mean. I wouldn't consider him an agent.
Well, maybe not in the formal sense of like an actual intelligence agent, but I get what you mean. An agent is like one of these people who's connected to this, like what you call a hive mind or like some kind of collective consciousness, right? And I think you were here when I came in the other day, and I had like episodes, and I was kind of agitated, and I was trying to explain that I got caught in like a vortex, and I couldn't really explain it. But this guy called Taser came up to me, and like it didn't make any sense. He's like, "Oh, you're like," he knew something was up with me, and he's like, "Oh, it's happening to you, right?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like you don't even know where you are," and like, and then all this shit. And then it was so weird. He was like, he had this service dog, and he's like, "This is my dog, Taser." But then he changed it, and he's like, "Actually, I'm Taser." So first he called his dog Taser, then he called himself Taser, and then he gave me a phone, and I needed a phone because for some strange reason I lost my phone, and whenever I start getting targeted, I lose my phone or my phone disappears. And so anyways, he came and gave me a phone, and he's like, the same thing happens to me, but in this particular place, and it's like a circular area. He's like, there's always someone who helps me. Like whenever I'm here, people always help me. And the weird thing is, there was another time when I was getting targeted, another time when I lost my phone, and like you said, I get missions that tell me to go to particular places. I went to that particular same place where I met Taser just the other day, and I swear I've told this story before. I'm just waiting there, and I just like, I know something's gonna happen. I need a phone, and I'm just like, if I go here, I'm somehow gonna get a phone, even though there's no reason why that would be the case. And I swear, two people come up in black suits, a man and a woman, and they like walk up kind of surreptitiously and like look around, and they go, the man goes, "Look, he's ready." She goes, "Look, he's ready," and the woman goes, "Yeah, he was born ready." That's what they say. And then they give me a phone, and I make the one phone call that I need to make. And then it makes no sense. Like, who are these people? Why did they approach me? Why did they say, look, he's ready, he's born ready? And why did they give me a phone, which I needed that phone? I needed to make that phone call. In exactly the same way, I got targeted. I lost my phone. They always manage to like shut down my phone. My phone stops working. My phone gets stolen because once you lose your phone, you're totally disconnected. Like you can't do anything, right? And in that exact same spot, a guy approached me, same place, comes up to me and gives me a phone and lets me make a phone call. So when you say agent, it's like, yeah, maybe not like a CIA agent, but these people are in on it. Like they know. And he was saying things where he's like, yeah, this happens to me too. And I was like, man, you helped me so much. And he's like, just pay it forward, is what he said. So he's
Yeah,
like, next time you,
that's
yeah,
what
right.
that's how I got when the guy gave me the money. He's just like, pay it forward
Yeah.
for the later.
And then the bizarre thing is, I said, I want to thank you. And so I said, you smoke because he gave me a cigarette, and I don't even smoke. But when people like this give me cigarettes, I'll smoke because I feel like it's like a mystical thing like this. So I'll have a cigarette with these people. So I was like, you smoke, I think you'll like this. And I took out this like shiny purple lighter that has a triangle on it and creates like an electrical X. And I gave it to him, and he kind of smiled, knowing, and he's like, yeah, I had one just like this, but I lost mine. Like, thanks for giving it back to me. So it's like in a weird way, I was giving him back the lighter that he lost without even knowing. It was the same one, like the one I gave him, this fancy electrical lighter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Can I say something to add? So it's
Mhm.
funny because you said his name was Taser, but the later
Yeah,
you gave him is kind of like a taser. You would
it is a
say
taser. Yeah, that's a
exactly.
good.
So it's like
Yeah,
he's in on it. He's 100%
yeah.
in on it. You know
Yeah, no, I
that's
could
full proof.
tell. I could
Yeah.
totally tell that he was in on it. Like he was saying things that like didn't make sense. Like I was talking to my mother because I called my mother, and then I'm like saying like you have to come like pick me up. I need to talk to you because like something's going on. And she's like, oh, I don't know. Like I was just about to go to bed, and I'm like talking to her, and he goes, so your mom went to the same mothering school that I did. That's what he says. He goes, your mom went to the same mothering school that I did, but he's a guy, like he's a dude. I'm like, what do you mean you went to a mothering school, the same one as my mom? Like just like weird comments like that like don't make sense. And like in a more broad sense, like, and he helped me out, and I gave him my number. And he actually, I didn't think he was going to call me. Like usually, if some crazy person gives you their number, you're not actually going to call, right? But he actually called me. He's like, I want to have coffee with you and look around and talk. So I'm really interested in what's going to come out of that conversation. But
When
like,
when can we expect that conversation? Are you gonna record it?
I'll try to get him on the podcast for sure. Yeah, like once he gets in touch and like I calls back or whatever, I'll 100% try to get him on board or whatever. And onto the podcast, and I'm really curious what'll come of it because I could just tell there was something special about him, like the way he was looking at me, the things he was saying, the place he was in, the way he was referencing the place. It was obvious that he was doing like what NSA calls like Twilight speak, like like giving me like subtle messages with what he was saying. And I just wanted to touch on how you said there's like a collective consciousness in your city. This is what I notice more and more. There's certain kinds of people I can tell just by looking at them. Like there's something about the way they hold the body, the way they dress, the way they act, and they are all like in a collective consciousness. Like they all have the same group mind, and to me they're hostile to me. Like they're always hostile to me usually. They try and, if I'm praying, they try and interfere with my prayers. If I'm trying to read the Bible, they'll try and stop that. If I'm wearing a cross, they'll be like, that cross isn't going to help you, that cross isn't going to help you. Or they'll see me walking, they'll be like, that guy's going to kill me, that guy's going to kill me. Or they'll be like, stay away from me, I'll cut your dick off. But like they always have this like hostile, fearful, or interrupting energy towards me, and I'm not doing anything to them. Like just recently, I was talking. A guy threw a drink at me, just like out of nowhere. He threw a drink at me, and I went over and confronted him and like chased him away. I was like, "Run away, little goblin! Run away, little goblin!" And he actually ran away. But it's like there's something about me and these particular people where they're against me for some reason. But it's like they all have like the same energy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Just because you brought it up, Twilight Speak is a Masonic method of communication that means words within words to the initiated only. So only people involved in that are initiated into what these words mean will mean something. That's what the intelligence community adopted. It was used for code speak for use in missions to remain secret to those involved in the mission specifically. So like if there's 10 people in the mission, all 10 people know what Sparrow means. So Sparrow is in the bathroom right now. That's a method of Twilight Speak. want to point that out.
Right, and I'm not saying it's like literally Masonic Twilight speak, but what I'm saying is like the way he was talking to me, it was obvious to me that he was symbolizing things to me that I would understand by saying weird things that wouldn't mean anything to anybody else, but he would know that I would understand. So I'm not saying it's like literally Freemasonic Twilight speak, but I'm just saying like he's saying things where it's like only someone who's in this program or being targeted by this program would understand it, and it's like a way to signal to each other, right? Like, for example, I've had like it's usually homeless people. Like I've been in a back lane looking at graffiti, and this homeless person comes up, and he's just like you would think he's just crazy if you were a normal person, but everything he's saying makes perfect sense to me. He's talking about angels, he's talking about demons, he's talking about God and spirits and all this like weird shit. And a normal person would just be like, "Oh, look at that poor crazy person." He's coming up to me and he's literally saying all the shit. He's like, "You understand? You understand what I'm saying?" And then he says a whole bunch more weird shit. He's like, "You get what I'm saying, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do get what you're saying, right?" It's like,
So that's what I mean, though, in regards to the Masonic method. So the Masons are the Illuminati, right? So the Illuminati have agents within that are not initiated Masons. So these people, when they're communicating to you, are being fed information about you, so that it seems like that. And so that's why like what you said about Twilight Speak. It's basically that, but these people are conditioned to say something that will mean something to you, and it's part of all the mind control research that they've been doing. But it all extends from the, if you don't believe that the Masons are at the core end of this back in the 40s, then it's yeah. The Masons are the alien cult. The alien works with the Masons. The Masons have agents and people that they've indoctrinated or recruited or drugged or whatever. And they use anybody around them they can. That's why there's an anti-Masonic party. But anyway.
right. So, do you feel like when you're involved in this spiral code thing, is it usually persecuting you? Is it usually helping you, or is it like a mix? Super Mortuo.
I would say for me, it's definitely a mix. I feel like I have things that kind of help me, like the message that warned me about my friend that they were in trouble. Like I felt like that was a warning, and I took that as like advice. Other things, like the encounter at the venue, I think that that led me to more harm because there was like a bit of a psychic battle going on between us, and that I feel like that in itself puts a target over my head because they know I'm capable to have like how to do things and work around certain energies and how to protect myself. The stronger I get, the more prepared I have to be. The more in the battle I have to be to not psych myself out and psych other people out and all these sorts of things. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and see, for me, like, I identify as a Christian or an Elohist, and like, I try and stay with like the Holy Spirit and God. And what I notice is there's all these people, like you said, that are like on the demon team or the devil team. They're part of like that crew, and they seem to just like recognize me automatically. Like, to say anything, they can just see me looking at me, and they're hostile to me. Like, they say weird shit that's like threatening. They throw stuff at me, this and that. And like one of the weirdest things, like when I was in Kelowna, I walked past this person and I didn't say anything to her. I was minding my own business. But as soon as I got close to her, she's like, "Stay away from me. I can fucking cut your dick off. I'll cut your fucking dick off. I'll kill you. I'll cut your dick." She was doing this, right? And I knew that she was like a demon. Like I could tell she was possessed by a demon. And as Christians, we're supposed to do like spiritual warfare. So I literally said, like, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ." And I like quoted a Bible verse and said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ." Now, no joke. She went from like animated, like, "I'll cut your dick off. I'll cut your dick off." I said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ," and this, and literally she went like completely limp. Like her body went limp, her face went limp. She didn't say another word. It was like she shut down. It was like she shut off completely and went limp. It was super bizarre, and it was like she was like an NPC or something. Like I just like turned her off. Which again, that wouldn't work on like just a meth head. It wouldn't work on just like a crackhead or just like a normal person. But for some bizarre reason, this demonized person, when I rebuked her, she was literally like kind of like swaying, like her arm was like swaying, and she like her face went blank, and I was like, that's proof to me that this is like spiritual warfare. And I run into it all the
So
time, like, you know. It's very bizarre. And so my theory is that like Satan is like NSA talks about how they have like an army of meth addicted tweakers, and I agree. Now whether it's aliens, the government or whatever, I believe, Satan is called the prince of the powers of the air, and he can use all of these people. Like he gets them strung out on drugs, he gets them homeless so that they're all confused, then the demons can easily get into them. Then when they see a Christian, he uses those people to attack them. That's why when you read in the Bible, when Jesus went places, demonized or possessed people would come up to him and be like, "What do you want from us, Son of God? Have you come to cast us out?" Or like they would like, and he would like cast demons out of people because they would see him and be like, "Oh no, it's like a Christian. Oh no, it's Jesus," and they'd like attack him or threaten him, and he'd cast them out. And this, I've seen this enough times in my own life. It actually, I almost can't go for a walk in my city without this happening. Like it always happens. There's always at least one of these people that interact with me. And so I'm completely convinced there's like some kind of hive mind, some kind of collective consciousness that uses people who are open to it through the drugs. And that's probably even why they flood the city with drugs to make more of these people. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that part of that you're close to that, and that those people that are around you that are affected by it are definitely susceptible to it and are used for it. A lot of these people that are targeted are typically, if you imagine if you're a brain implanted person and while doing drugs and you just like lose your mind and you just continue, you're going to go homeless, right? And so that happens probably more often than anybody wants to admit, regardless of the cover up. So these people are definitely susceptible to it. And after years and years of conditioning while being homeless and on drugs and panhandling and drinking and sleeping on the street, it definitely makes them very easily manipulatable by that. I see it when I go into the cities. When I go into the city, I see people acting strange, and I realize that there's a lot of those kinds of people that are going to be around. So I've seen that. I've seen it in person too. I've seen them they use them in social experiments too. So they use, because not all tweakers are homeless. There's some tweakers that are totally fine, have cars and etc., and they use them as well. And I believe the DEA and the CIA use them for minor infiltration methodologies, and but they are also so scared by the fact that they think they're possessed by the devil or whatever, that they will be very useful to these agencies to do this kind of stuff for them.
Well, right. I think the agencies can use them too, and like it's really hard to draw a line between like the devil, the agencies, the aliens, and I guess that's where like we all know that you heavily emphasize the alien point of view, NSA, and we all know that I heavily emphasize the demon, like God, the devil point of view. I'm just wondering, where do you sit on that, Super Mortuo? Like, do you believe in gray aliens or aliens? Do you think that they have anything to do with what's going on with you, or not so much?
I think there's potential for that for sure. But to say if it's a gray alien or whatever life form, we only have like a small spectrum of like of a clue to like understand what through all of that is. Even with all this conspiracy information or intelligence information, we only have so little to really acknowledge, and to we it's like the way I see it, like, so there probably is like these physical like extraterrestrial life forms, but I personally feel if there's going to be something that we have to encounter, it's going to be an extra dimensional life form to basically come into this three-dimensional space reality and to process into our world. That's what I think is going to happen.
Right. And I believe in extra dimensional entities too. And I think it's possible to see demons as extra dimensional entities. I think demons used to have bodies. Like, this is just sort of my theory. I think demons used to have bodies, like angels and demons had bodies. But in the war in heaven, a lot of these angels and demons, the demons were killed in the war. And so now they're disembodied spirits. Like, they're called wandering spirits because their bodies were killed in the war, and they can't go up to heaven because they're banished from heaven. No place was found for them in heaven anymore. And they don't go down to hell because there isn't actually such a thing as hell until the lake of fire in the future. So now there's these disembodied demons on earth, which we would then call extra dimensional entities, because they're not in this physical world, right? They're in another dimension, but they interact with us, and that's why they can possess people. And that's why I think they want to flood the city with like meth and shit like that, because when people are on meth or heroin, even, but especially meth or crack, that makes it really easy for the demons. Like I've known people, right, like who use crack, and I had a friend who used crack, and he's like normally seems like he's pretty cool. And I put him on the podcast on video, and I said, "Do you have anything you want to say to my friends?" And he's like, "Yep." And he goes, "Okay." And he like made like this like freaky demon face, and I was like, "Whoa, what was that?" Like the demon came through him, like, and literally made his face go all like freaky. And it's like, and I see these people, they have a certain kind of eyes. Their eyes are like glazed out, but also staring. Like it's like their eyes are blank, but also staring. You know what I mean? And it's like I call that demonized eyes. And I think there could very well be like a CIA operation to flood the city with drugs that make people more susceptible for demonization. And there's a guy called Russ Dizdar who was maybe killed. He died last year in a car crash, but I'm kind of suspicious that he was killed, assassinated. He was saying that they have these satanic super soldiers everywhere. And like whether you believe it's like truly Satan or that's just a term for it, he says they use like dissociative trauma to create alters, like split their personality. And then one of the personalities is essentially used to host a demon, but they can still act like normal people with their normal one. But there's a way they can trigger it, whether with technology or some other way, where the demonized personality will come out. And so his theory is at some point they'll call it the Black Awakening. They'll like hit a button, 5G, 6G, whatever it is, and millions of demonized people will suddenly activate and go full demonized, and we'll have like a purge zombie apocalypse type thing play out.
I don't know about that, but the part about trauma-based mind control is how they do it. And so the trauma-based LSD, when you're in a state of LSD tripping, you're basically being traumatized in a sense. Like you're going to remember what you trip with. And so what happens when they're tripping is the ET comes in with the holograms and plays demon or plays whatever they need to play while they're tripping because they're in a state of trauma at the time. And so that and eventually, and if they're meth addicts, for example, they can try and drive them into psychosis to break them. And so there definitely are ways to program these guys in a sense that make them very susceptible as a form of trauma. So the drugs are definitely used to induce a form of trauma that will, because when you're being, basically when you're traumatized, when you have trauma, you're creating an intense emotional response to that trauma. And if they can then, through synthetic telepathy, i.e., audio to your ears, to remind you of that situation or set you back in that mode, it'll put you in a heightened awareness state. You'll kind of remember things in that era, all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of that, and there's so a lot of what was going on in Monarch programming was that they would do suicide programming on people they couldn't control. There's all kinds of other types of monarch programming that was researched by the Nazis that came out later on. There's psychic programming, which is the theta programming or whatever, where they give you specific details about things that you shouldn't know and you freak people out and all that kind of stuff. So there's different methods and different types of there's different victims basically to the mind control, and some of them are more useful than others. Some of them are sex slaves, drug mules, all kinds of stuff. Methamphetamine makes you very susceptible to suggestion. So even if you're not in a psychosis, just being high on amphetamine in a euphoric state makes you susceptible to suggestion. That's why they were using it in psychological operations with the voice of God weapon in the Middle East by piping biblical verses into jihadis while they were on Captagon jihadi pills. So it was a way of kind of radicalizing them at a distance without even doing anything.
Well, right, yeah, Captagon, right? They use this jihadi meth combined with like long range acoustic devices to, fill people's minds with this stimulant combined with this religious fanaticism, which creates super soldiers and stuff. And even I'm kind of one of those people in the sense that like I don't use meth or have to use drugs, but I'm quote unquote bipolar. Now, whether I'm actually bipolar or not, I do get possessed by what I call the Holy Spirit. And this is why I know it's the spiral code and it's not just a mental illness, because the spiral code all of a sudden will kick in. The Holy Spirit will tell me, Shogun, grab the cross off your wall, pick it up, and go to this specific place. And I'm like, I have like a homing beacon. Like I know exactly where I'm going. I'm not wandering around. I'm not just going on a casual walk. I'm like, I have to go here. and it's like a place where I would not have any reason to go. Then when I get there, there's literally like a bunch of people worshiping and praising God and stuff in a place where that would never normally be happening, never before, never since. I was in my apartment. The Holy Spirit's like, Shogun, take your cross and go. I'm just like, okay. And I just like completely obey it. I'm like carrying this cross, walking through the streets. Like, I don't care how crazy I look. I don't care at all how bizarre it is. It doesn't bother me at all. I follow it directly like a beeline to a whole bunch of people praising. Like, it's prophesying the end times, singing, praying. It's like this big, intense thing. And I'm like, how did I know? Like, why did I take the cross? Why did I go there? Why was that happening? So you can say that I'm mentally ill or that I have bipolar, but bipolar wouldn't allow me to know that this church meeting was happening. It wouldn't allow me to know how to get there or when to go. So either the government is beaming it into my head, aliens are beaming it into my head, or it is the Holy Spirit. And because it was literally like pick up a cross, go, and it's a bunch of people praising God, I can only conclude that it is actually the Holy Spirit. But at other times, I've been possessed by like demons. Like I had these beings be like, Shogun, will you tell us how to get to Earth? Will you tell us how to get to Earth? And I wasn't wise then. I didn't test the spirits, right? The Bible says don't believe every spirit. You have to test the spirits. Well, I didn't. And I was like, cool, spirits are talking to me. That's awesome. And they're like, Shogun, will you do this? Will you do that? Will you show us that? I was like, sure, I'll show you anything you want. I'm like your tour guide. Like, whatever you want, let me give you a tour. And then in the end, it led me down to like literally meet the devil and become possessed and like all this horrible shit. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should have asked who was like asking me these things, right? It didn't even occur to me. I was like, invisible beings are telling me stuff. I'm just going to go along with it. And I'm like, oh shit. And it literally ended up with me being like exorcism of Emily Rose. Like I was doing the whole demon voice, like, you know, from The Exorcist where they talk in that freaky way. So I've been on both sides of it. Like I've been possessed by the Holy Spirit and I've been possessed by demons. And so I believe that like both of these things are going on and like and it all ties in. And then there's also humans, like the people who came up and went, he's ready, he was born ready. Or I've told you about when the police came out of nowhere, literally physically beat me into the back of their car. And I'm like, why did you do this? Like, who do you work for? It doesn't make any sense. And they go, we work for the one eyed grand architect of the universe. And I go, well, where are you taking me? And they go, we're taking you to put an octopus inside your body. Now, again, I am mentally ill, sure, but my mental illness does not cause me to hallucinate things like that. Like, I know for sure those were real memories. Those people did say those things. And there's no, like, really reason why anyone would say that. So, like, people are targeting us, energies are targeting us, dimensional beings are targeting us. And it plays out in everything: graffiti, music, television, people, and it's like that's why we have to do this series because we're just kind of kicking it around. We're just like scratching the surface because it's so confusing and it's so strange. It's really hard to make it something. And when people hear this, like who aren't familiar, they're just going to listen to these the schizophrenics just talking. They're completely nuts. That's what I thought when I was on MK Ultra, when I was on the round table, when I met NSA and other people, and they were telling me about this stuff. I was already deep into conspiracy theories. And I was like, these guys are crazy. Like, this targeted individual thing is total bullshit. These are just mentally ill people who can't accept that they're mentally ill. So they've created these elaborate fantasies where they're so special that the government is doing all this shit. That's what I thought. Now, I'm like, this is 100% real. Like, there's no doubt about it that it's real. And like, we're kind of trying to keep our episodes shorter. So hopefully we can do more in the future, more show. But like, I'll go into more of these details about how I know for a fact that this is real. Like the police, the government, like they do this. Go ahead and say.
So, real quick on how that you're talking about demons and testing and how they were like asking you questions and stuff like that. So there's a podcast by Lex Friedman with the guy that's doing psilocybin research for the government right now. Now, Dr. Strassman was doing DMT research for the government and funded by the Scottish Rite Masons. He stopped his research because of entity interaction, and he wasn't comfortable with dealing with it and what the people were seeing. So in the current psilocybin research, and you can listen to this on on Friedman's podcast with the guy, he discusses about entities while on psilocybin, and he says to act interested in the entities, not afraid, but act interested in the entities you interact with. So that's part of this technology that they're interacting with us with. We have to communicate to it for it. We have to basically communicate to it. So they want us communicating to it to help this, as far as I'm concerned, help the ET. ET's told me once they want to become more human. So they're learning off of humans, and they want you to interact with them, and they want you to play with them. Your ontology is Christianity, and so you got this angel demon thing going on. But they are on a different level in their actual research. So they're trying to get people to actually communicate to them, and because they want to research us so that they can be able to better manipulate others. So they're doing this research on the low level people because they want to be able to influence the elites. They want to be able to influence the power players of the world. Like, for example, Hunter Biden, the whole scenario is completely this Illuminati shit. They set up people around him. They set up, whores around him and shit like that. They set up all the drugs around him, and they were fucking with him because they were trying to control people like Hunter Biden that were important, and satellites to very important people. Now, the president's son, I don't know how much more of an important person you could figure out how to blackmail and mind control, other than the president's son or the vice president's son. So clearly he was on target by something on this planet. He's one of the most powerful men on the planet, and he has the exact signs of drug manipulation, sex manipulation, and all the other aspects of how MK Ultra works. And the CIA said specifically he was susceptible to blackmail because of his use of pornography, cam girls, and hookers, and also he was doing drugs. So all these things that it was set up is in correlation to that. So those two things I just wanted to end with.
Yeah, well said. I mean, they know who you are. Right? They have a deep profile on us. They know our internet history. They know everything about us, and so they know how to target people. And even from like the archontic position, it's like the one-eyed architect of the universe, the Masonic checkerboard, the black and white. Like they use the evil and the good, right? So people like me who see ourselves as like holy warriors and crusaders, like, yeah, Shogun, you're a holy warrior, you're a crusader, the Holy Spirit has a mission for you, and I do good. Like I actually go help people, I give food to the poor, I help the hungry, I give like comfort to people, and I do good things that the Holy Spirit leads me to do. Meanwhile, these demon people, they go do bad things and they actually sell drugs or abuse people or whatever, but the argument is like they're actually both being potentially used by the same force. It's just they're just like, well, you're this, so we'll use you for this. You're this, we'll use you for that. But from a higher point of view, they're just moving chess pieces around and they're using everybody. So there is like the devil team and the good team. And like I'm this like Christian guy, but like I can hang with like devil people as long as they're, but not anymore. I used to be able to. I used to be able to hang with like devil people and be like, okay, you're a devil person, I'm a Christian, and we'd be cool. But now I guess I'm like a real Christian because now they react violently to me. Like you see an open eye how if I say the name Jesus or God, he's like, joking, God's not going to help you. You're not going to be saved. God doesn't forgive you. And there's like this crazy, like violent outburst against me that isn't actually called for by what I'm saying. And so it makes me think that like they really are like threatened by me. Like there is like a war going on and we're all like pawns. You know?
But that's why a lot of schizophrenics think they're prophets and they're important. Is because the program itself will induce that. They will have people around you that tell you you're special. I had guys at the bar look at me and buy me a shot and tell me I'm doing the Lord's work. Uh, out of nowhere, some guy in a cowboy hat I never met. You know, running this op on a guy like me in a CIA town who's very aware of what's going on is very silly. But it showed me that they do use this religious connotations to try and convince the target that they are special. They want you thinking you're special because that's part of getting you to talk to the entity and communicate with it and you know help them perfect their technology interaction. And they use spirituality. That's why it's Jesuit monarch programming. This stuff has been going on for a while. They convince you you're special. They want you thinking you're part of a biblical story. And they even try playing along with me, calling me Jesus or some shit, and that like the 12 apostles were around and certain people in my life were different apostles and all this other like no. They even piped Jehovah into my head. They piped the words Jehovah, I'm Jehovah, and all this stuff like that. And I'm an atheist. I have a lot of theology research, and so I knew what was coming with this kind of stuff. But then I find this discussions with the voice of God weapon using psyops, piping biblical verses, and the jihadists. So I know, okay, so not only are we doing this in America, but it must be a global thing that they're doing all around the place. And so they're using this spiritual manipulation. That's why it's called the voice of God. Like synthetic telepathy is the voice of God that was known as God in interaction in the past. We also have one major thing that is in relation to actual UFO abductees and people that are communicating with these entities. They have a Messiah syndrome. So they come back down and they have this thing that they're like, oh, I have something to share with all of man and all this other stuff. And so a lot of messianic complexes come out of abduction victims. And that's actual real psychology and parapsychology. You can do research on that if you like. So you got to be careful when thinking that kind of stuff, because that's part of the system itself.
Yeah, and from an alien point of view, like unfortunately we lost a really good podcast with Giovanni Dark, but it was about aliens. Like he believes in aliens and the different kinds of aliens. And he was saying, the gray aliens, they kind of test on you and they're kind of malevolent. They stick things up your butt and this and that. But then there's the tall white, or not the tall whites, but like the Nordics, the Aryans. And the way he describes it, they take you on board and show you a great time, right? They fly you around, they show you space, they teach you cosmic wisdom, and they tell you like you have to tell the people to get rid of nuclear weapons and save the environment and stuff like that. And they have like this benevolent thing. And like I do, like I believe I have a mission from God. I really believe that God has given me specific missions. Like one of my missions from God was that I was supposed to be a holy warrior for God. And the second one was that I was supposed to be a word bearer for Jesus Christ and bear Jesus Christ's sacred word. And and I believe that, right? But I can also see how someone like NSA would say, well, they're playing on your ontology. They're using LRADs to put that in your mind. They're activating you, right? And I can't rule that out logically, but my faith completely believes it is from God. And like if they are orienting it that way, then it's so sophisticated and so powerful what they're doing that it's like impossible for me to not believe it. I totally believe it. Like it's so powerful, it's so compelling. But I can't rule out that a super advanced like deceiver could deceive me. But then the Bible tells us that's why we test the spirits and so forth. So like you pick your ontology, right? I have my ontology, you have yours, Mortuo has yours, but that's what's cool about this spiral code thing, and that's what's cool about this Temple Mount podcast is we all have different ontologies, but we have very similar experiences. Like we're all part of a program. I honestly, like I made this server, but I think the server made itself through me, and I was targeted to make me into the person I am now, who's totally different than the person I was before. Like Daniel, the person I was like a person. Like he was like a human being, like anybody else. He had like family, friends, feelings. The person I am now is like different. I'm like a weird, like assassin, like robot, like crusader, like weird character. And I think they made me that way. They did the trauma based mind control. They did the MK Ultra. They killed the person I was, and you talk about how the psych ward is spiritual murder, and it is. So they spiritually murdered Daniel. Then they built Shogun in the place where he was. Then they used Shogun to build the Round Table, and then they used Shogun to build the Temple Mount. And the Temple Mount itself and the Round Table, it is the program, and that's why all the people here are in the program. That's why everybody who comes here, like Mortuo, me, you, and everybody else, is like in this program. I honestly think like this is the program. Like this server is the program. You know what I mean? They use it to gather us together, make us play off each other ontologies, monitor us, watch us, study us, use us. And I'm not saying that bad way. I think for me it's a good thing. But I can't deny that it's not a coincidence that like my ex girlfriend is like, how do you attract all these like quote unquote crazy people? It's crazy. Like they just come to you like a moth to a flame. It's like, are they coming to me? Or are they coming to the server? Is there a difference? You know what I mean? But it's like we attract people who are in this program, and then the program hyper accelerates because us all talking to each other. Like everyone thinks I'm like people in the server constantly have episodes where like Shogun this, Shogun that, and they start tripping out that I'm a spy or I'm a wizard, or if something happens in their life, they think it's because of me or because of each other. They think other people are other people. This person isn't really that person. It's really this person. So it's like us all being together is the program. You know what I mean? Like,
So there was Project 89 was a psychological operation created by MI6 Masons in Australia. Okay, it's online. I've given you the PDFs about it. They talk about the targeting as an agent and using these people through the medium of the internet to build them up. So yes, partially that's true, but we are aware of that fact. So once you're aware of that, it falls apart. You're aware of this. I've shown you the documentation on it. People wrote this down to create a silly psyop for it, and so like you're almost becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy in regards to it, and that's kind of disheartening because there are people that are watching right now, for example, laughing about it. These things are um, because you have to be careful of that kind of stuff, especially when you're discussing it publicly, because it's like, they're gonna be like, what are you talking about? Well, if you look at Project 89 and you go do some research on it, they discuss it. The Masons in the Masonic Bible, in the Bible, obviously New World Order for the Ages, right? There's 3 million Masons. They discuss rebuilding King Solomon's temple. Okay, King Solomon was a Jewish mystic. There's a lot going on in the Jewish religion with the New World Order too. The Jewish religion itself is very prophetic religion they will try and actively produce prophecies that are in the books and things like that. So we got Masons and all this other stuff going on with that, and they're using the medium of the internet to indoctrinate these people to create willing agents into what they believe is the New World Order. And they will help them, and they have a lot of money, and it's not like they control everything, but they do control a decent amount of things. And
Right.
you
I
get into
just
the floor level stuff. The floor level stuff is like the tweakers on the street. Then you got your business guys that they can use and recruit. That's the way the CIA recruits assets so that they can utilize them in anywhere they want. And whether you want to believe it or not, the extraterrestrials are working with the Select International Intelligence Group, which is a fragmentation of MI6, CIA, Mossad, and a couple other allies that are aware, and that's what they're doing.
Well, and I just wanted to point out something that's important, right? You mentioned rebuilding Solomon's Temple. What's the name of this server at the Temple Mount? Where are they going to rebuild Solomon's Temple? On the Temple Mount. And so this server is deeply connected to the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is the ground where Solomon's Temple, the third temple, will be rebuilt. And here's the weird thing. When when the round table ended, it ended by fulfilling the story of the round table. Lancelot in the round table betrays King Arthur because he's jealous of something King Arthur has. Well, Lancelot in the round table was a member, and he was jealous of my server, and I was King Arthur, and because he betrayed me, that was the end of the round table. So the whole story played out. Then I made the Temple Mount, and I didn't know what to call the server. I've told this before. I had no concept in my mind of what I was going to call the server. And I swear to God, a voice spoke to me. Like, this doesn't happen to me. I don't hear voices. My condition doesn't cause me to hear voices. But I was like, what's it going to be called? And it was just like the Temple Mount. And I didn't question it. I was just like, it's called the Temple Mount. It just came to me. And then the more that I go on, I realize how important that name is, and like you were talking about being a Templar bloodline and the Portugals. My dad says that I'm from a Templar bloodline. He did reading. He's like, yeah, Shogun, you're a descendant of the Templars, the Knights Templar, New Jerusalem. So it's like these names that get given to us, the Round Table and the Temple Mount, come with this huge body of like rabbit holes and conspiracy theories, Oak Island, and all these different things that tie together. So it's like something is influencing us. That's the spiral code. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Is it an artificial intelligence? Is it aliens? Is it the government? Is it God? Is it the devil? Is it all of the above? But what I know for sure is it's not me. This is not all coming from my head. I'm not. I am a genius. Like a lot of people have called me a genius, but I'm not a genius in the sense that like I could have possibly put all this together. No way. It's just happening, and I'm just like seeing it. I'm like, oh wow, that this that, but it's coming from somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
It's neurocybernetics and stuff like that. Well, like bloodline stuff aside, if bloodline matters, so my English line comes from the House of Percy. Joffrey de Percy died in Jerusalem in the fucking First Crusades. His heart was cut out. He died in Antioch. You know, all that shit. It's the so what? Like to the Knights Templar, the Percival was one of the Knights of the Rounds, right? So like House of Percy goes to Percival.
Mm-hmm.
So all that bloodline stuff is another way, another method of control because they want you feeling that you have that. Now, eugenicism, which is the Egyptians were eugenicists, right? Egyptians and all the way till now to the Nazis and all that. So eugenicism was a thing to these people, and they believed in genetic memory. So Scientologists believe in past life regression. So they do remote viewing and past life regression. So there's little idiosyncrasies between these groups, cults, and religions that relate to the same ideology. Satanists, for example, believe in something called epigenetic. Like they believe human beings have the ability to be, you know, bred into a superhuman and all this other shit. People believe this shit. I'm saying I believe it, but I'm saying people did believe this kind of stuff. So the bloodline stuff, and there's Rick Sprigmeyer's, bloodlines of the Illuminati and all that stuff. And unfortunately, my grandfather's last name was Watson, and Watson was one of the bloodlines. All that stuff. So like genetically I'm fucked if it's real, like if this is a real thing, but
Mhm.
it's really not. I got targeted at 29 because of an argument with someone in the NSA. Like they had no idea who I was before that.
Right. Before we go any further into your story, which is very interesting, it's super Mortuo's episode. Also, I was just wondering, was there anything else you wanted to add, or anything else you wanted to get into Super Mortuo?
I guess I could leave off with some final words. Is that
Yeah.
whatever brings us together at the end of the day, whatever the spiral code is, whether it be aliens, God, Jesus, Satan, whatever it is, it's probably the most powerful fucking source we're well connected to in this universe. It's the most powerful fucking disenfranchised like just element that is combining all these things together to create this fountain of awareness and turmoil for the either the worst or the best parts of the world to come, and it's important that we have this server so we could learn from each other, we could learn from people's experiences, we could adapt, we could train ourselves to speak our minds to bring ourselves to the awareness of what's surveying us or what's becoming within us to seek forth into all these, I guess, phenomenon, right? So I just want to say that.
I really appreciate it, Super Mortuo. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and doing this. This is now our third Spiral Code episode. So what I'm going to do after we finish is I'm going to go and I'm going to gather all three links because we have all different platforms and our stuff's all over the place. And I'm going to combine them and post them because I want people to listen to them. And we're going to do this as an ongoing series. So this is the third one. I'm really happy with it. I hope that, with something like this, it's intended to be impossible to understand. That's how it works. Like, because if you try and talk about it, you're like, no, like an invisible force is making the radio talk to me in order to make me talk to this person. And like, it's intentionally made to be impossible to talk about so that if you talk about it, you'll sound crazy. Our job here and what we've done by building this server is like create a safe space, gather all these people together, actually communicate, actually compare notes, and actually a lot of people are like, oh shit, I didn't know this was happening to other people. I thought it was just me. I had no idea what was going on. Just having the term the spiral code, just having terms like cyanosis, just having these concepts, it's so healing actually. Because mental illness, the stigma, they're just like, you're crazy and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just crazy. Take your pills. It's like the worst. But once you start realizing, you're like, no, there really is a mystery here. We may not have it nailed down, but like there really is. So I just want to thank you for sharing your part of it, and I say thank you. You've done a lot to share your part of it. It's always great to see you on the podcast. We're trying to keep these episodes a little shorter, more condensed, user friendly. So I think we should wrap it up now. But again, thank you so much, Super Mortuo. Thank you, NSA. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for listening. And thank you to Austin for recording. If you can record again in the future, we need recorders all the time. That's really, really useful, as well as uploaders, etc. If anyone wants to volunteer. That being said, please join the Temple Mount Discord server. Check out the Unified Theory channel for really important episodes. Check out the Temple Mount podcast channel for just all kinds of great content. Keep an eye on announcements. Make sure you subscribe and join us again tomorrow at the same time. We're going to have another event, and then we'll have lots of events Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll probably do like 2 things a day. So if anybody has something they want to talk about, if anyone wants to be a guest or do a debate or an interview or anything of the sort, please do get in touch with me because we're going to be recording a lot and doing a lot of events. So that being said, God bless. I love you guys. Thanks for being here. And if you are going through the spiral code, just have faith, center yourself, take a minute, take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. Don't panic. They want you to panic. Just like what I do is just observe and be curious. Like, don't be scared, but just be curious and just like watch and like, you don't need to understand, but just try and notice those patterns and try and slowly, connect the dots. That's the best advice I can give. So,
One final note: Philip K. Dick called it the Black Iron Archon prison, and he was on methamphetamines.
right. And we tried to do a podcast about that, and and we did do a podcast about that, and we'll have to do another one about it in the future. There's so many aspects to this. That's why I do a podcast every day because, if you want to chip Mount Everest, if you want to carve Mount Everest into, the the Washington Monument. It's just like one chip at a time, right? We just got to keep chipping at these mysteries and chipping at these mysteries. And for as long as I'm alive, until they put a bullet in my brain or they frame me and throw me in prison or they lock me up in the psych ward again, I'm just going to keep chipping at this. And if I can quote a Bible verse, it says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a mystery or to conceal a matter, and it is the glory of kings to search a matter out." So, as Christians, we are priests and kings, and so it's our glory to search these mysteries out. Things that other people would just say, well, it's just impossible, and we'll never know. It's just a mystery. Just leave it at that. Kings, we don't stop at that. Like, we search it out, right? And that's what this is all about. Like, with your help, with all you guys, we're searching out these mysteries. And I'm so grateful that we have a place like this where we can do this and we don't just have to turn on the TV and be told, oh, Ukraine, COVID, wear a mask, get a vaccine, buy a product. Like, we have this, and it's just so much better. So thank you all for being part of it. We've been going 3 years strong, and God willing, we'll be going until the end of days. So that being said, thank you, Super Mortuo. Thank you, NSA. And please join the Temple Mount and subscribe to the podcast. And that being said, let's jump to the Templar Tavern so that we can have some chat and just chill and relax for the rest of the night. And thanks again for recording, Austin. If you can send me the recording in DMs and or upload or post it directly to the Temple Mount podcast channel, we'd be extremely grateful. And if that's something that you can continue to do in the future, nothing is more helpful than that. So thank you so much. That'll conclude this. I'll see you guys in the Templar Tavern.